Look, I've tried to be fair about this, but the reality is I'm not going to sugarcoat this video, yo. Tony Khan is not a good booker. Point blank, he's just not a good booker. The fact that he won Booker of the Year, I get him winning in 2021 for the Observer. 2022, obviously, that one's a little bit more tough because there was a change of power in the middle of the year for WWE, and the first half of the year for AEW was fine. Second half, not so much, but it wasn't all his fault. This year, I thought they had a couple of good months, but my God, I'm in shock. I'm recording this video after AEW Dynamite from August 16th, 2023. This was probably my least favorite. It was the worst episode of Dynamite since like the pandemic days. This was a bad episode of AEW Dynamite. And here's what's mind-blowing about all this. And the thing that's funny is the copium that people have over AEW. I understand AEW has great wrestlers, and I understand that the fact there's competition now is good, and I'm happy that the wrestlers are getting paid. I'm very happy about that. I'm glad there's more wrestling out there. That's not even like anything to do with this. It has to do with the fact that when it comes to AEW, they knew back in May when they first announced that they were going to do All In London, it would be the biggest show in company history, no matter what. They're at 80,000 or so seats, almost a complete sellout, almost. Biggest pro wrestling show for AEW of all time, easily their WrestleMania. They knew that, and they knew that All Out was the very next week. They were booking two pay-per-views close to each other. And at the time, people weren't sure what was going to happen with that, if they were going to make All In like a special or something. Either way, they knew this. They had Forbidden Door, and they had Double or Nothing in May and June. So they have had 3 months to build up the All In card. 3 months to build it up. And here we are. We're 2 weeks away from the card, and now we're getting angles, and now we're getting an actual sort of formula of what they're going to do. First of all, the MJF and Adam Cole stuff has been the absolute best stuff AEW's done. Why? Because it's fun. Because the two characters are interesting. It has nothing to do with 5-star matches, nothing to do with who can do as many flips. It's all about the characters of MJF and Adam Cole and how they interact. In wrestling historically, it's never been, when it comes to drawing money in the United States, it's never been about cool matches and great moves. It's always been about the story. It's always been about what people are interested in. So it doesn't surprise me that MJF and Adam Cole, which really had the best segment on AEW Dynamite this week, no surprise, doesn't surprise me that they had the best segment. But my God, everything else on this show. It's just, first of all, there's tons of behind the scenes turmoil because Tony Khan seems to think that nobody else will ever draw money for him and that CM Punk has to be the biggest star he's ever gotten, which you could make the argument. You could also argue it's Jericho or Moxley, but in his mind, CM Punk is his top guy. Even though the Collision ratings have not even come close to what they did back in 2021 when Punk first showed up, he seems to think that that giving this guy so much power over Collision, and if you don't know what's going on, there's tons of information out there about, and it's obviously secondhand information from news sites and whatnot about how much power CM Punk has. This guy has so much power that he can send home the head of talent relations, Christopher Daniels, an executive, sending him home because Ace Steel can't be at the building. Well, Christopher Daniels didn't throw a chair at an EVP. Ace Steel did. Here's a guy, CM Punk, who didn't like what Ryan Nemeth said, Dolph Ziggler's brother, so he went up to him and said, "Say it to my face." So basically, you're trying to punk him out. You're trying to bully him around when really, when somebody goes up to you and says, "Say it to my face," it's almost like if you say it, they're going to swing at you. So is that going to be another person CM Punk swings on? So CM Punk can just walk around the dressing room and swing on EVPs and attack other people on the roster, and Tony Khan will sit there and twiddle his thumbs and say, "Well, he got me some good ratings 2 years ago." It's so amazing to me when you go back and you look at Tony Khan's interviews. He's constantly berating WCW, berating mistakes made in wrestling, saying he's not going to make those mistakes. He's not only made those mistakes, but made many more. So we have that problem going on right now where people in the company are actually really upset with the morale. Morale is in the toilet right now because of how much power this one guy has. And it's almost like he has more power than the EVPs, which, some people would say is a good thing. Others would say it's not. Depends on what side of the fence you're on. Either way, giving a talent that much power, no matter how much you might think they can draw for you, is usually a mistake. It depends, especially when he's sending home members of management. It's mind-boggling. But that's not all. So we've got that problem going on right now because Tony Khan's a terrible leader. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tell me how many Super Bowl rings they have, bro. Tell me how many successful seasons the Jags have had. I rest my case. So let me get back to my point. So on AEW Dynamite, they had an interview with Kenny Omega. Then they had in the same interview, he got jumped by 3 guys who weren't even involved in that angle to begin with. 2 of them weren't. Takeshita is. Building up a 6-man. And then Hangman cuts a promo. Horrible. This AEW crammed 3 weeks of angles and build-up into one 6-minute segment to build up that 6-man. Literally, it's Omega talking, then he gets jumped, then Hangman cuts a promo next to behind an ambulance or something to create the 6-man. Nothing from Ibushi, no cliffhanger, no teases. It's almost like in the past week, AEW woke up and said, "Oh my God, we have a pay-per-view with 90,000 people. We gotta book matches." Horrible. If you think this is good booking, you either started watching wrestling very recently or you really don't understand the business because he's had 4 months to build up this card. 4 months, yo. And even though they might draw a big house this time, there's people in the UK who have been really, really let down by this buildup to the point where me personally, I'm not going to this show. I don't live in the UK, but I was more excited for All In a month ago before we had any matches signed. Literally every week that goes by, the longer they took to actually sign matches and do angles, the least interested I've been in this show. And I'll be honest, I'm going to watch the show, but I'm not going to care because this show seems to be sort of like a I don't know, maybe like a pre-show to All Out. So you're going to have Kenny Omega wrestle Takeshita at All Out in front of 10,000 people, but in front of 80,000 people, you're going to have him wrestle a 6-man tag. So we're not going to have Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay 3, which would have been perfect because Will Ospreay's from the UK. You could have had the match there in the stadium, 80,000 people, New Japan level match. We're not going to do that. We're going to give you the New Japan match with Omega and Takeshita at All Out. Instead, we're going to have a 6-man and we're going to have Ospreay have a match with Jericho for some reason. What the hell's going on with this? What are they thinking? Logically, everybody suspected we're going to get Ospreay and Omega. Then a couple weeks ago, the rumor came out to be Ospreay and Jericho. So they had 2 weeks, no promos, no teases, nothing. Ospreay just attacks him out of nowhere. Okay. I understand that Ospreay's aligned with Don Callis, but the connective tissue isn't there. This entire episode of Dynamite felt like they were like, oh my God, we have to do everything we can to get over the angles on this show, to try and get people happy for this pay-per-view. And then to top it all off, Tony Khan made himself, and he's already been an on-screen character, but now he's in an angle with MJF and Adam Cole. Can you believe that this guy approved an angle where he's yelling at his wrestlers inside of a room? Yeah, Tony, we really believe that you, who sat there and literally let one of your wrestlers who's 0-2 in the UFC badmouth your EVPs and take a swing at them, literally assault them, literally attack them, physically assault them. You're going to just sit there and be perfectly fine with that and swallow your pride. As CM Punk is burying your dressing room, calling you a bunch of children, you're sitting there nodding your head, not sure what to do. Uncomfortable. This is what happens when a rich boy with rich parents, because he didn't make that money himself, his dad did. This is what happens when a boy who grew up a mark on the message board worshiping Dave Meltzer has a freaking millionaire, billionaire father give him all this money and say start a wrestling company. Everyone else in the business has said so. People who are don't even have heat with Tony have called him out for this, dude. And so instead of treating this like a business and treating it like, hey, we have to take this seriously, it's a clown show. And it's fucked up, bro, because I've been to AEW pay-per-views. They're usually a good time. I've been to TV tapings. I support the company. But my God, the booking is so atrocious for this All In show. And guess what? After All In, they're going to have 2 shows. One Dynamite and, 3 shows. One Rampage and one Collision to build up All Out. 3 shows in 1 week. Instead of, and of course they already have other matches teased for All Out, and they have Luchasaurus against Darby in a coffin match or whatever. They already have that. But why couldn't we have everything from this pay-per-view cycle building to both All In and All Out, and you figure out a way to make those cards work? WWE can book 2 nights of WrestleMania, no problem. But you can't book All In, All Out 1 week apart. It's just the idea that this guy's a good booker. And the problem is because he worships the Wrestling Observer newsletter so much, whenever he gets one of these Booker of the Year awards, he actually thinks it means something. When, let me tell you, I have friends that work for AEW, and you know this if you know anything about me. The company has not made a profit yet. They're going to make some money off of All In, of course. It's a huge, successful show. But are they going to be able to draw again or get pay-per-view buys when the card is literally a last-minute, like, oh my God, we got to book the show, when you knew 4 months ago? Everything from May to August should have been week by week built up, should have been little by little taking us to the pay-per-view. Instead, we goofed off with a bunch of tournaments in the middle of the month or the middle of the summer, a bunch of like pointless matches and angles that went nowhere, and Orange Cassidy wrestling every single week in meaningless title defenses, doing his shtick where he has his hands in his pockets. 4 years of this guy with the same gimmick. And I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand how people are so into this product now. And they're not, because obviously the numbers are showing they're not that into it. The numbers don't lie, my friends. Meanwhile, you've got other companies doing tremendous business because they're taking their time and they know what they're going. So how can somebody be Booker of the Year if he's this bad of a booker? I cannot believe they crammed the build-up to that random 6-man match with Takeshita and the Bullet Club Elite, or Bullet Club Gold, against Hangman Omega and Coda. They could have been building this up for weeks, dude. And actually like announced the match maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. No, instead they wanted to goof around and not take it seriously. We had to do Blood and Guts. Why couldn't they do Blood and Guts at All Out? Wouldn't that have made more sense? Instead of doing it in July every year, you do War Games at All Out. That way you have an attraction for that show. That way you have All In, have all of like the singles and tag matches, and All Out could have the War Games. Couldn't you do that? You would have had Eddie Kingston available. It's unbelievable how bad this company is, man. And they have such good talent, and they have so many people that work so hard, and yet it's being run by a fucking 18-year-old in a 40-year-old man. No, I'm sorry, 13-year-old in a 40-year-old man's body, who can't manage a company, who has wrestlers fighting every other week, it seems. You've got drama all over. It's all over the internet, dude. It's all over the place about what's going on. Oh, no comment, my friend. No comment, my friend. All he wants is for people to fluff him and freaking powder his pussy whenever he does those scrums where he's like, oh, well, Oh, ask me a question. But if you ask me a question I don't like, you won't be allowed here anymore. Which, by the way, I have friends who were in those scrums who are not allowed there anymore because they didn't ask him the questions he wanted to answer. I hate AEW right now, and I never wanted to hate it like this. I really didn't. It's a complete shit show. The private stuff is going public. Punk is literally cutting promos after the show, which you know are going to be recorded and posted up on Twitter, then apologizing for it afterward, then getting mad that other wrestlers are responding to it. No wonder this company's falling apart, man. Somebody needs to come in there. Like, what Khan needs to do, bro, is step away. Let somebody else run the company. Just be the freaking silent owner. Do something else and let somebody else run and book this thing, because right now it's just, there's no growth. All In was a huge success, but where do we go after that? Why is the television not growing? And you could even make the argument the reason why All In's doing so well is because the UK's been starved for wrestling for a while. They had a great Money in the Bank show. They want something bigger. Here comes All In. But instead of getting these awesome dream matches that you should be doing at a stadium show, instead you're going to save those for the building with 10,000 people the next week and not do it in the building with 80,000. Booker of the Year, I'm sure. I really, really, I came so close to turning Dynamite off. Thankfully, the second hour was better than the first hour, even though there's some stupid stuff there too. I came so close to actually shutting the show off. It was so bad. It's really bad, dude. And I just want it to get better. I just want it to improve. And I don't think it's going to under this leadership. I think this guy is too caught up in what Dave Meltzer thinks. I think he's too scared to lose CM Punk, even though CM Punk has been locker room cancer since 2021. Well, no, since 2022. 2021, everything seemed fine. 2022 is when everything got bad. The dude's just has this dude by the nuts, and by the vagina, because he has no nuts. And it just feels like, I don't want this guy running this company. It's his little dream that he's using his daddy's money to freaking make it, when literally, like Randy Orton said, he's Jacksonville Dixie. He is Dixie Carter of Jacksonville.